I heard rumors that my family was preparing a surprise party for me. It turned out to be for my cousin on my own birthday. I pretended not to know anything. I sent a message to the family WhatsApp group. Thanks for reminding me that last names don't guarantee affection. The next morning, I closed the joint bank account where I kept family savings. That afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. The first clue came 2 weeks before my birthday. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard my mother talking on the phone in a low voice from the hallway. Yes, it has to be a complete surprise. No, he doesn't suspect a thing, she whispered with contained excitement. Almost everyone has confirmed. It's going to be special. My heart skipped a beat. I had never had a surprise party before. At 29, the Mendoza family wasn't exactly known for their displays of affection towards me. I was always the diligent cousin, the responsible nephew, the son who never caused problems. Perhaps for that very reason, I went unnoticed at family gatherings where my cousin Alejandro captivated everyone's attention with his travel anecdotes and natural charisma. For years, I had convinced myself that I didn't need validation. I focused on building my career as an accountant, on saving meticulously, and on being the silent pillar that the family needed without even knowing it. In fact, when my Uncle Carlos proposed creating a family bank account for emergencies and common projects, I was the first to contribute a considerable amount. Over time, that account became the fund that financed everything from repairs on Grandma's house to loans for my cousins when they were having difficulties. I was the unofficial administrator, the one who contributed the most and withdrew the least. That's why that overheard conversation filled me with an almost childish hope. Finally, they saw me. They recognized my value beyond my financial stability. The following days reinforced my illusion. Aunt Margarita canceled our usual Wednesday outing with a flimsy excuse. My sister Laura seemed to avoid any conversation about future plans. And on 2 occasions, when I entered the living room, my father hastily changed the screen on his phone. They're organizing something big, I thought, smiling to myself. I allowed myself, for the first time in a long time, to feel important. On Thursday, 5 days before my birthday, I stopped by my parents' house to pick up some documents. From the study, I heard my mother talking enthusiastically. Alejandro is going to be so happy. It's been difficult to coordinate everything so that it coincides, but it's worth it for him. My stomach tightened. Alejandro, my cousin? Surely it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he was helping with my party, or maybe they were talking about inviting him from afar. Alejandro lived in another city and rarely visited. It's just part of the surprise, I told myself to calm my sudden anxiety. Over the weekend, my sister asked me to help her move some boxes she had stored in my apartment. Among them, I found one with half-completed invitation cards. Curiosity got the better of me, and while Laura was distracted talking on the phone, I took a look. "Let's celebrate Alejandro's triumphant return together," read the elegant card in gold letters. Saturday, May 15th, 8 p.m. May 15th, my birthday. My name didn't appear anywhere. I checked several more cards with trembling fingers. All the same, all celebrating Alejandro's return. No mention of my birthday. When Laura returned, I kept quiet and smiled as if nothing had happened. But that night, in front of the mirror, I practiced my best surprised face while the lump in my throat grew until it became unbearable. The day before my birthday, while reviewing some reports for work, my phone vibrated with a notification from the family WhatsApp group. It was my Aunt Margarita. "Everyone dress up tomorrow. Remember, it's a special occasion. See you at 7:30 p.m. at Martin's parents' house." My house. The celebration would be at my house. A small flame of hope rekindled in my chest. Maybe the invitations I had seen were just part of the surprise. Maybe they would celebrate both my birthday and Alejandro's return. My mother called me an hour later. "Martin, dear, can you lend us the keys tomorrow? We need to prepare some things for the evening." "Of course, Mom," I replied with feigned naturalness. "Something special?" There was a brief pause which I interpreted as her opportunity to mention my birthday. She didn't. I'll be there, I simply replied. Perfect. Your Aunt Margarita is very excited. You know how much she loves Alejandro. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Yes, everyone loves Alejandro very much. See you tonight, dear. For the rest of the day, I immersed myself in work to distract myself. At 6 p.m., I took a long shower and dressed in my best suit. If I was going to play this role, I would do it with dignity. Arriving at my own building as a guest, the doorman winked at me conspiratorially. For a moment, my heart raced. Did they know it was my birthday? Your family arrived early, Mr. Martin. They seemed very enthusiastic. Thank you, Roberto, I replied and went up in the elevator with a lump in my throat. Upon opening the door to my apartment, the first thing I saw was a huge sign that read, "Congratulations, Alejandro." Blue and silver balloons, my least favorite colors, decorated the living room. A chocolate cake with strawberries, my cousin's favorite, I'm allergic to strawberries, occupied the center of my dining room table. Surprise! They all shouted in unison when I entered, before realizing it was me and not Alejandro. Oh, Martin, you're early, said my Aunt Margarita, visibly disappointed. Alejandro is coming in half an hour. My mother came over and gave me a quick hug. Thanks for lending us your house, son. The decorations look beautiful, don't they? I nodded, unable to form words. My father put a glass of wine in my hand. Come help us with the last few things. Your cousin doesn't know anything about this. He's going to be so excited. For the next 30 minutes, I pretended normalcy while setting plates, serving appetizers, and listening to my family rave about Alejandro, his new job in Berlin, his recent relationship with a Brazilian model, his plans to buy an apartment in Barcelona. He's coming. Everyone to their places, announced my sister, looking at her phone. We hid, me in my own closet, and waited. When Alejandro entered, the cry of surprise was genuine and deafening. My cousin, perfectly dressed and tanned from his recent trip, feigned surprise masterfully before letting out a laugh and opening his arms to receive hugs. I can't believe it! You're the best, he exclaimed as my aunt hugged him tearfully. I stayed in the background, watching the scene as if I were a stranger in my own home. When it was my turn to greet him, Alejandro gave me a strong hug. Martin, thanks for lending your house, cousin. Always so generous. I returned the hug mechanically. Congratulations on the new job. Thanks, brother. By the way, isn't it your birthday today? He asked in a low voice. I felt as if ice water had been thrown over me. He knew, and yet he had accepted this party. Don't worry, I replied with a forced smile. It's not important. The evening progressed among toasts and emotional speeches. My Uncle Carlos raised his glass and proudly proclaimed, to Alejandro, the pride of the Mendoza family. Always breaking barriers, always shining. Europe isn't ready for what's coming. Everyone applauded and cheered. I drank my wine in silence. During dinner, my mother casually commented, it was so convenient to be able to do this farewell today. Next month we're all so busy, and Aile's real birthday falls right when he'll be settling in Berlin. Yes, added my aunt, besides, Martin so kindly lent us his house. Everything aligned perfectly. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. In front of the mirror, I observed a 30-year-old man whose own family had forgotten his existence. Or worse, they remembered it but considered it irrelevant. Returning, I found everyone gathered around the cake singing Happy Birthday to Alejandro a month early. My cousin, in the center, smiled radiantly as he made a wish and blew out the candles. It was at that moment that I made my decision. With trembling but resolute hands, I took out my phone and wrote a message in the family WhatsApp group. Thanks for reminding me that last names don't guarantee affection. I sent it and put my phone away. No one would see it until later. They were too busy celebrating. But I already felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. When the party ended and everyone left with hugs and good wishes for Alejandro, I was left alone in my apartment, full of other people's balloons and dirty dishes. I cleaned everything methodically, threw away the decorations, and sat on my sofa with a cold, calculated determination. Tomorrow would be a new day, and it would be the day the Mendozas learned that I existed too. The alarm clock rang at 5:30 a.m. I didn't really need it. I had barely slept. I showered, dressed in a dark gray suit, and left the house when the streets were still deserted. I needed to get to the bank as soon as it opened. The family bank account had been my Uncle Carlos's idea 6 years ago, after Grandma's hospitalization. For emergencies and family projects, he had said. As an accountant and the most responsible of the cousins, he had named me joint account holder, along with my father and Uncle Carlos himself. What began as an emergency fund gradually became a common pot that financed everything from vacations to renovations and informal loans. I contributed almost a third of my salary monthly, while others occasionally contributed smaller amounts. During all that time, I had kept a meticulous record of every transaction. I knew exactly how much I had contributed, 68% of the current total. I also knew how much the others had withdrawn without ever replenishing, 47% of the historical total. The last big withdrawal had been for Alejandro's trip to Brazil 3 months ago, an investment in his future, and Margarita had argued. At 8:01 a.m., I entered the bank branch where they knew me well. Teresa, the manager, greeted me with a smile. "Martin, what a surprise to see you so early. Everything all right?" "I need to take care of something important, Teresa," I replied calmly. "I want to close an account and transfer the funds." Her expression changed slightly. "Your personal account or the joint family account?" I answered without hesitation. Teresa nodded professionally, although I perceived her discomfort. "I'll need your identification, and we'll verify the terms of the account." During the next hour, I completed forms, signed documents, and answered verification questions. As a joint account holder, I had full right to withdraw funds, although closing it technically required 2 signatures. However, there was a clause that allowed for unilateral dissolution under certain conditions, including irregular use of the funds or significant changes in the personal circumstances of the joint account holders. The system shows large recurring withdrawals and few deposits in the last 2 years, Teresa commented, reviewing the history, and all withdrawals were authorized by the other account holders, never by you. "Exactly," I replied. "That's why I'm requesting dissolution under Clause 8.3 of the contract." Teresa nodded slowly. "I understand. Have you considered talking to the other account holders first?" "There's been enough communication," I replied firmly. At 9:47 a.m., the process was complete. The funds, a considerable amount, were transferred to my personal account. I didn't take a penny more than I had contributed, even leaving a small surplus. I had the receipts to prove it. When I left the bank, my phone had already started vibrating in my pocket. First, it was a message from my father in the family group. "Does anyone know what happened to the account? The bank says it's closed." I muted the group and went to a nearby cafe. I ordered a full breakfast, eggs, toast, juice, and coffee, and enjoyed every bite while the notifications piled up. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to respond immediately. At 11:15 a.m., after calmly finishing my breakfast, I decided to check the messages. There were 27 notifications from the family group, 12 private messages, and 8 missed calls. The group was chaos. My father demanding explanations, my Uncle Carlos threatening legal action, my Aunt Margarita anxiously asking how they would now pay for the trip to Europe to visit Alejandro. The private messages ranged from my sister's confusion, "What did you do, Martin?" to my uncle's fury, "This is an unforgivable abuse of trust." The last message was from my mother, "Son, we don't understand what happened. Please answer. We're worried." I took a deep breath and decided to answer only one call. I chose my sister Laura, the least confrontational of the family. "Martin, what the hell is going on?" "Dad is furious." "Good morning to you too, Laura," I replied calmly. "I suppose you've all found out." "Found out?" "Uncle Carlos almost had a heart attack." How could you close the account without telling anyone? The same way you organized a party for Alejandro on my birthday, at my house, without even mentioning it. The silence on the other end of the line was revealing. That has nothing to do with it, Laura stammered. It has everything to do with it. For years, I've been this family's ATM. I've financed vacations, repairs, loans that are never repaid. And yesterday, on my own 30th birthday, I was completely ignored in favor of someone whose birthday isn't even until next month. Martin, it wasn't like that. It's just that Alejandro's job. Enough, Laura. I only withdrew what belonged to me, not a penny more. In fact, I left a small surplus. All the receipts are in order, and I have detailed records of every transaction over the last 6 years. But what are we going to do now? Aunt Margarita already bought the tickets to visit Alejandro and Mom's kitchen remodel. That's exactly the problem, Laura. It's always been, what are we going to do with Martin's money, and never, what does Martin need? The call went on for another 20 minutes. Laura alternated between pleas, accusations, and finally a grudging acknowledgement that perhaps, just perhaps, they had taken my support for granted. Just tell me one thing, I asked before hanging up. Did you remember that yesterday was my birthday? Another revealing silence. I figured as much, I said, and hung up. For the rest of the day, my phone didn't stop ringing. I rejected all calls except one, Alejandro's. Cousin, you've really screwed up, he said as soon as he answered. So it seems, I replied. Look, about yesterday. I felt like an idiot when I realized. I tried to mention it discreetly, but I was trapped in the situation. I know, I conceded. You, at least, remembered the date. And now what? Are you going to cut ties with everyone? I considered my answer. No, I'm just going to establish new terms. I will no longer be the ATM or the invisible son. You know, I've always envied you a little, Alejandro confessed. Everyone depended on you. I was just the family entertainment. That night, as the messages continued to accumulate, I ordered takeout and poured myself a glass of wine. On my table was a small cake I had bought for myself with a single candle. Before blowing it out, I made a wish to never make myself invisible again. The next morning, I drafted a formal email to the whole family. I calmly explained my actions, attached detailed records of all transactions, and established new conditions for our family relationship. I'm not cutting ties, the message concluded. I'm just reminding you that I also exist, and that my existence has value beyond my bank account. 3 days later, I received the first apology. It was from my mother, shy, sincere. Then came my sisters, more elaborate. My father took a week. My uncle Carlos, a whole month. 6 months later, we celebrated my 31st birthday. It was a small but genuine gathering. There were no grand speeches or extravagant decorations, just a family meal where, for the first time in many years, I truly felt seen. Alejandro called from Berlin to congratulate me. Was it worth it? He asked. Every penny, I replied. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is to remind the world that you exist, and that your existence has consequences. Silent kindness often goes unnoticed until it decides to raise its voice. The true foundation of family ties lies not in the material things you contribute, but in the mutual consideration that sustains it. Never allow your generosity to become the veil that makes you invisible to others.